Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We're back again with more Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, and this time I want to go through all the mythic abilities that you have access to in the Pathfinder game. I did a video where I went through both the abilities and the feats, but they've added some new abilities since that time. And when I went through it, I just clicked on it and I just read it. I didn't really try to go in depth and try to say, well, this is what's good, this is what I don't think is particularly good, all that kind of stuff. And so in this video, not only are we going to go through all of them, but I'm also going to give you my own personal thoughts on what are some effective combos and what are some of the abilities that I like to use. And then, of course, we'll flip over at some point and do the same thing for the mythic feats. I don't want this video to be crazy long, so we might end up splitting it up into two parts. We'll see. Hopefully, this will give you all some good information. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. Abundant casting. You have learned a way to increase the number of spells you can cast per day. Benefit. You can cast 4 more spells per day of first, second, and third levels each. This is absolutely essential if you're mainly a spellcaster, especially the type of spellcasters who's going to get to 9th level spells. They have 2 upgrades for this. So you get access to, what is it called? Improved abundant casting, which gives you 4 more spells per day of 4th, 5th, and 6th levels each. And then you get greater abundant casting, which is going to give you 4 more spells per day of 7th, 8th, and 9th level spells. So yeah, if you're any sort of wizard or sorcerer and you want to have lots of spells available for you to use, even if you're some of the classes that don't get all the way to the 9th level, like Woljif is only going to get up to 6, but he wants as many spells as possible to be able to blow enemies up with. So at the very least, he's going to be taking abundant casting and improved abundant casting. So this is very, very useful, very nice to have. I definitely recommend it if you want more spells. Always a chance. Your attacks are now less affected by luck. Benefit. You don't automatically miss when you roll a 1 on an attack roll. Gotta be honest with you, I never take this. And it's true that I look in the combat log sometimes and I notice that I've critically missed, but it's not like tabletop where if you critically miss, some horrible things can all of a sudden happen to your character, you know, where they might slip, fall, and stab themselves or something like that. If you critically miss in a video game, then you just miss, right? So I don't particularly see it as worth it to take this. Mind you, if you're really worried about this and you're a trickster gets the ability to make every 1 attack roll instead become a 20 automatically. I think that's definitely superior to this. So just throwing that out there, but I never take this personally. Archmage Armor. You are a master of the Mage Armor spell. Benefit. Whenever you cast Mage Armor on yourself, it gives an additional armor bonus equal to your mythic rank. This is fantastic for spellcasters who need some extra protection, especially if for whatever reason you're using a spellcaster who's going to be in melee range. For example, you can sometimes use Woljif in melee range if that's your personal preference. This is a great way to try to give him some additional protection. Also, keep in mind, I'm pretty sure there's a potion that gives mage armor. So even if you're running like an alchemist, you could take this and then use the potion to put it on him or herself and get this effect. So great stuff. Ascendant Element. You mastered a certain element to a spectacular level. Choose 1 energy type: acid, cold, electricity, fire, sonic, or negative. The damage of that energy type you deal can no longer be prevented or reduced by resistances or immunities. I find it, first of all, this is great, especially if you know you're consistently going to be using a particular type of element. So there's a subclass for an elementalist to change all spells to be of 1 element that you use. So it's great to combine that with this. Also, if you're a lich, you get access to make all of your spells do negative energy damage. So again, this is a great opportunity to combine that with that class and make it even more powerful. I find it a little bit odd that Holy is not here. Holy is definitely an element that you have access to, But I'm trying to remember if I've ever seen a situation where I used holy damage and someone resisted part of it. Definitely never had a situation where they were immune to it. So maybe that's why it's not here, because there's nobody who's resistant or immune to holy damage. But other than that, this is absolutely great stuff. Ascendant Summons. The creatures you summon gain a piece of your mythic power. Benefit. Creatures summoned by you gain a bonus to its strength, dexterity, constitution, wisdom, and charisma equal to half your mythic rank plus 1. Their attacks now ignore damage reduction except N-. I never know the correct way to say N/-. I just know it means if the creature has that, their damage is just going to be reduced regardless. But otherwise, unless they have that particular stat, then these summoned creatures are going to be able to ignore that damage reduction. Significant power boost for your summons. If you're using summons on a regular basis as a way to be able to attack other creatures, you absolutely want this. It's great. Battle Meditation. You are able to channel your mythic powers into invigorating and coordinating your allies. As a standard action, you can enter a state of battle meditation. While in this state, you are unable to move, lose your dexterity bonus to AC, and count as being staggered. All allies in a 30-foot radius gain a morale bonus to attack and damage rolls and saving throws against fear effects equal to 1 + 1 per 3 mythic ranks. I personally never used this before. Probably works well if your main character, him or herself, is not someone that really helps the party. Maybe there are other things that they do that help the party. For example, if you're a summoner and your summons are already out there, then maybe the attacks you do aren't that damaging. So instead, you just pop this on and use it to boost up your entire team, as opposed to you flinging out physical attacks or spells that are not doing all that much. Other than that, can't imagine a situation where I'm really going to be using this. Best jokes. You are a master of the Hideous Laughter spell. When a creature fails a saving throw against your Hideous Laughter spell, another random enemy within 30 feet of the target is affected by the same spell. This chain continues as long as targets continue to fail their saving throws. It's great if you're using Hideous Laughter. Me personally, I did about half of a playthrough as an enchanter, someone who was specializing in enchantment spells. But the problem that I have with the enchantment spell tree as opposed to illusion is that a lot of them are single target. And this, of course, fixes that. But then you're going to have to get the meta magic feats to put it into more spell levels so that you can keep using this. Because honestly, I don't think any of the really great enchantment spells allow you to just shut down a room. They're all single target. And so to me, the tree overall is kind of limited in how great it is at crowd control. But if you really like Hideous Laughter or you really love the enchantment tree line, this is going to definitely work for you. Boundless Healing. Your healing is no longer affected by common limitations. Benefit. Whenever you cast a Cure Wounds spell or another healing spell, it becomes Reach as though using the Reach spell feat. Also, the amount of hit points it now restores depends entirely on your caster level and disregards any limits in the original spell. Reach spell. You can alter a spell with a range of touch, close, or medium to increase its range by one range category using the following order: touch, close, medium, and long. Indispensable. You definitely want this on whoever is your main healer. And 9 times out of 10, there is somebody on your team designated as the main healer. This is not a game where you're going to be able to get by without healing. If you don't have this, especially, it's not quite, no, it's bad either way. If you're using somebody like Darren, he's going to be in the back. You don't want him getting up close. And then all of a sudden, you're going to have him use a healing spell that's going to require him to get right next to you while you're in the thick of the fight. And he's going to get cut down trying to help you and bring you back up. So absolutely, you want this on your healers. And same with Soseo. Soseo will be in the middle of the fight because he's melee range. And then he'll try to leave it to come heal you and take a bunch of attacks of opportunity on the way. So indispensable. Brutality Incarnate. The wounds you inflict with your natural attacks are anything but natural. Benefit. Your natural attacks now ignore all damage reduction except n/minus, whatever the hell that, however the hell you say that. And yes, I've Googled it. I've looked. How do you say this properly? I don't see anybody who's provided clarity on the way you're exactly supposed to communicate that. Anyway, this is a huge damage increase for your natural attacks. Just about all the enemies in this game have some sort of damage reduction, and this will allow you to bypass all of it. So definitely recommend you take this if you're using natural attacks. Cleaving Shot. Each time you deal critical damage with your ranged weapon attack or reduce the target to 0 hit points, you deal your weapon damage to all other enemies in a 10-foot radius. This is absolutely fantastic if you know that you're going to crit on a regular basis or you're going to kill your enemy on a regular basis. So I'm not sure if I have it on Windwalk yet in my demon playthrough, but if I don't, I definitely should. She's critting all the time and she's killing people all the time. So definitely worth having. Dimensional Retribution. You leave a mystical link with enemy spellcasters that lets you instantly move to them. Benefit. Every time you are targeted by an enemy spell, you gain the ability to teleport to the spellcaster as a move action for the next 2 rounds. This is great, especially for melee characters who don't have the ability to teleport themselves. It gives you the option of, if they're targeted by a particular spellcaster, they could just go straight to that person. So Regal, Grey Boar, those type of people, this is absolutely fantastic for them. Distracting Shots. Your ranged weapon attacks are dangerous enough for the enemy to forget about melee threats. If you hit an enemy with a ranged attack, they receive a penalty on AC against melee attacks equal to half your mythic rank for 1 round. This is okay. Keep in mind, your mythic rank has to be high enough for it to matter that half of your mythic rank is being dealt as a penalty to that particular creature's AC. I feel like it's probably better in turn-based mode as well, because in turn-based mode, it's probably easier to say, okay, this has been procced on this particular person. Now all my melee guys go and attack that person. As opposed to real-time with pause, a lot of times your team is just going to be spread out. You may not even be looking at the log closely enough to realize that this says triggered on a particular individual. So, you know, your mileage may vary. I don't use it all that much, to be honest with you, but it's not useless. If you're willing to specifically make the changes around enemies who have been hit by this, it could definitely be a good part of your strategy. Domain Zealot. You move closer to your deity and to the power it has over its divine domains. Benefit. You can use the abilities of your domain as a swift action. This can be absolutely fantastic depending on what domain you've taken. For me personally, the people I run and the party members you get, it's not really all that useful. So Sale has the charm domain, and again, as I've mentioned before, I'm not all that impressed with enchantment, so I don't use it all that much. So I don't bother to put this on him. And then when I'm running clerics myself, a lot of times I'm using the animal or the community domains. And again, they're not getting the type of powers that it will make me want to pick this up. But if for whatever reason you're running domains that give you access to powers that you really, really want to be able to throw out as swift actions in the middle of a fight, this is a great option for you. Elemental Barrage. You master the art of raining elemental spells on your foes and found a way to empower them by combining different elements. Benefit. Every time you deal energy damage to a creature, you imply an elemental mark to it. If during the next 3 rounds you deal energy damage to a marked target with a different type of energy, the target is dealt additional divine damage. The damage is 1d6 per mythic rank of your character. So, useless at the beginning of the game. But by the time, if you're a major spellcaster, by the time you get to like around level 15 or 16, you can probably use the meta magic feat that allows you to quicken some of your spells, which allows you to use them as a swift action. So for example, a fight starts, you could start as a swift action with Scorching Ray on a particular enemy, and then as your standard action, you could throw Lightning Bolt and hit the entire room. So that could create a situation where every single turn, you can deal different types of energy damage to the same person, which could be especially useful on a boss if you want to be able to whittle their damage down quickly. So of course you need to have enough magical penetration, and your difficulty class needs to be high enough for that particular class of spells in order for this to all break through. But if you can do all that, then this is going to add some significant damage onto your build, and it could be worth taking. Emergency help. In a dire situation, you can instantly make your way to a companion in danger and get them back into combat. Benefit. 3 times per day as a move action, you can teleport to an ally who has less than 30 hit points. Until the end of the next round, your first healing spell or ability is empowered and maximized, as though using the Empower spell and maximize spell feats. Empower spell. All variable numeric effects of an empowered spell are increased by half, including bonuses to those rolls. Saving throws and opposed rolls are not affected, nor are spells without random variables. Maximize spell. All variable numeric effects of a spell modified by this feat are maximized. Saving throws and opposed rolls are not affected, nor are spells without random variables. I never use this. And even on higher difficulties, I'm finding it hard to find a situation where it'd be worth taking this, especially if you've already picked up Boundless Healing, which we talked through earlier. It's going to increase how much healing you can do, and it's going to allow you to be able to do it from a distance, so you don't need to teleport over to a particular ally. And if an ally just got cut down, might have been ranged, but oftentimes you don't want to be standing in that same spot. That's a hot spot. You want to heal them from a distance, and hopefully they can handle whatever else comes their way in that spot for the next round. So to me, this probably isn't worth it. And even at higher levels, you're probably using heal, which is going to give that flat boost and clear a bunch of bad statuses. This, to me, doesn't seem worth it. But if I'm missing something, by all means, let me know. Enduring spells. You have learned of a way to prolong the effects of your beneficial spells. Benefit. Effects of your spells on your allies that should last longer than an hour, but shorter than 24 hours, now last 24 hours. This is a monster ability if you have a lot of great buffs that you can actually use, because it then leads into, what is this thing? Greater enduring spells. You have mastered a way to prolong your beneficial spells. Benefit. Effects of your spells on your allies that should last longer than 5 minutes, but shorter than 24 hours, now last 24 hours. So if you think about all those great buffs that you need to last as long as possible, like Heroism, Death Ward, Protection from Arrows, Stone Skin, Communal, all that kind of stuff, you can make it so that lasts 24 hours on your character. Also keep in mind, this will apply to buffs that you get from your mythic path as well. For example, if you're an angel, you get a buff called Sword of Heaven, which is going to significantly increase not only the damage you can deal, but also the healing that you can give to your allies. Usually that buff lasts for a very limited amount of time. You can make it last for 24 hours if you have greater enduring spells. So depending upon your build, it's absolutely worth it to take it. And actually that brings up something up I forgot to mention as well. Greater abundant casting. So it talks about you get more spells at levels 1 through 9, right? Well, if you're a certain class that has synergy with the mythic path that you're choosing, you can combine your spell book. Otherwise, you have to keep your spell book separate. You'll basically have 2 spell books running at the same time. Greater abundant casting and the other versions of it always apply to your base spell book, but if your spell books are separate, it doesn't seem like it applies to your mythic spell book. So for example, if you're a scroll savant, you can combine your spell book with Lich. And then for both Lich spells and scroll savant spells, you will have 4 more spells per day, levels 1 through 9. But if your 2 spell books are separate, you'll have 4 more spells per day, 1 through 9 of the scroll savant spells, but the Lich spells will still be whatever slot numbers they would be at based upon your caster level. I'm not certain if that's a bug or if that's the way that Owlcat actually intended it, but that seems to be the way that it is right now. Enforced Vigor. Some people motivate their companions by their mere presence, while you learned that pain is a much more potent motivator. Benefit. Every time you damage an ally, they gain a +2 mythic bonus on attack and damage rolls, and a +1 mythic bonus on all saving throws. The bonuses last for a number of rounds equal to half your mythic rank. I've never taken this. Even on my most evil possible playthrough, I can't imagine wanting to have to damage my allies before every tough fight in order to give them these bonuses. There are better ways to increase your attack and damage rolls. I pass over this. Ever ready. You are always ready to unleash some extra attacks. Benefit. Whenever you make an attack of opportunity, you gain a bonus on the attack roll and damage roll equal to your mythic rank. The number of attacks of opportunity you can make each round is increased by 2. I would venture to say all your frontline fighters should have this. Attacks of opportunity are very, very common in this game. You definitely want to be able to make more than one in a round, and getting an additional bonus to your attack and damage rolls when you have to do an attack of opportunity is fantastic. It's actually incredibly annoying to watch an enemy run right past one of your party members and they either A, don't attack because they don't have any more for this round, or B, they completely miss on the attack. So I feel like all your frontline fighters should have this, especially if you have a frontline fighter who's using strength, which means more than likely you're using an enlarged person on them. They should be getting attacks of opportunity all the time, as long as they're in the thick of things, and this will make sure that they can take full advantage of it. Expose Vulnerability. Your ranged weapon attacks expose the enemy's vulnerable points. Benefit. Every third hit with a ranged weapon against the same enemy deals additional 1d6 per 2 mythic ranks divine damage. To me this is just okay. When I first started doing playthroughs for the game, I thought this was amazing. I put on every archer. But honestly, it's only doing it per 2 mythic ranks, right? And so it's going to be a long, long time before you're actually doing any serious kind of damage with this particular ability. I rank it real low. And frankly, if you're playing through the beta, I don't see why you would take it at all. The maximum you're going to get in the beta is rank 7, maybe 8. And that's right at the end of the game. So to me, this just isn't worth it. Inspirational Leader. You are a beacon of hope for your commanders and they perform better near you. Benefit. Your allies within 50 feet of you gain a bonus equal to half your mythic rank +1 to their initiative, their saving throws against mind-affecting effects, and their concentration checks. It's okay. There are some builds that just don't make great use of mythic abilities. Like right off the top of my head, I kind of feel that way about Regal. I feel like all his good stuff is really in mythic feats, and you just kind of add some things from mythic abilities to give them a little bit of flavor. So in that particular case, this is something good for them to do that will, help the overall team. But I wouldn't say there's any situation where this would be your first choice. Last Stand. Your mission is too important to fall in battle, and your mythic powers let you endure unbelievable things. Once per day, when your HP drops low, you become unkillable. For 2 rounds, you become immune to damage that would make you unconscious. Obviously, this is huge if you're playing on higher level difficulties. But if you're playing on normal and you're repeatedly ending up in a situation where somebody is getting obliterated, fight after fight after fight, the problem is you. Just being straight up. You got to figure out, what are you doing wrong? Is this person in the wrong place in the formation? Is your build not right? Are you not putting the buffs on this person that they need in order to give them a proper level of protection? I never use this on normal during my playthroughs. It shouldn't be necessary. But on higher levels where death might be unavoidable, this actually could serve a purpose. Leading Strike. Your strikes make cracks in the enemy existence, leaving weak points for your allies to strike. Benefit. Every time you hit a target in melee combat, you leave a mark on it. Any ally attacking the marked target deals additional divine damage equal to 1d6 per mythic rank to the target, consuming the mark. I like this. For whatever reason, some people have seem down on it, but I think it's great. First of all, it's per mythic rank, which means it's steadily going to increase in power as you get more mythic ranks, and it happens automatically. All you got to do is just be hitting enemies in melee. And if you're hitting an enemy, surely your allies are going to be hitting it as well. So putting that mark on and having that mark consumed should not be a problem whatsoever. The other things, some of the other melee abilities that people like people love Mythic Charge, but you have to manually select that. I feel like Mythic Charge is only great if you're going in, if you're doing time-based, if you're doing turn-based, because then you can manually select the charge. But for those people playing real-time with pause, Leading Strike is much better. It doesn't require any micromanagement. Limitless Rage. Your rage knows neither limits nor bounds. Benefit. You no longer have a limited amount of rage rounds per day. Instead, whenever you enter rage, you get a temporary hit point for every 2 rounds of rage you will be limited to without this ability. Fantastic if you're running a build that uses rage. Keep in mind that this does not apply to the rage power you get from being a demon. That has its own time frame and is not affected by this. So this is all about if you're a barbarian or a blood rager or someone like that, then this power becomes absolutely indispensable. It's certainly indispensable in the build that I'm running right now in my demon playthrough. So yeah, great stuff. Magic Nullification. Your mythic powers can negate any magic around you. Benefit. Activating this power grants you magic immunity and dispels any spell effects on you. My personal opinion, this is trash. I know thoughts vary regarding this, but dispels any spell effects on you means it dispels all buffs on you. So if you're running the type of team where you've got a ton of buffs on your people, which you absolutely sure, because otherwise you're getting shredded and you're probably trying to take last stand, then this does nothing for you. Because sure, it's going to take off a particular magic ability, but it's going to take all your good stuff as well. So instead, you should be focusing on your saves being high enough that you're not being ripped apart by certain spells. Master Shapeshifter. You learn to use any shapes to the utmost. Benefit. Whenever you become the target of a polymorph effect, all the physical ability scores adjusted are modified by +4. Additionally, if you have the Wild Shape ability, you can use it any number of times per day. Absolutely fantastic if you're running the type of build where you're shapeshifting on a regular basis. So in case you haven't played with it before, what happens is if you shapeshift into something like, a bear, a wolf, whatever, it comes with some stat bonuses that will occur for your person. Like I think bear gives you already a +4 or +5 to strength. And so this is going to make it an additional +4 on top of it. Just fantastic stuff. You definitely want it if you're a shapeshifter. Mythic Charge. Your charge carries the weight of your mythic powers. Benefit. Your charge attacks deal additional divine damage equal to 1d6 per mythic rank. Again, like I was saying before, charging is awesome. And if you take the time to charge, great. It's going to really help your melee characters. But most of the time, if you're playing real time with pause, you're not going to be charging every single fight. You're not going to be charging every single time it's available. So there are going to be opportunities to charge that you're going to miss. And overall, it's going to deal less damage as opposed to, again, Leading Strike, where you don't have to do anything manual. You don't have to think about it. You could just take that and forget it. So if you're playing turn-based on literally every fight, then absolutely Mythic Charge over Leading Strike, because you're going to ensure that every single time you can charge, you do charge. But otherwise, I would say if you're a melee character, ever ready, then Leading Strike, then Mythic Charge. Powerful Shadows. You learn to utilize the real power of the shadows. Benefit. Your shadow spells are 20% more real. So shadow spells are in the illusion school, and it's basically spells that will take conjuration spells and then try to put them out as illusions and make the opponent believe that they're real. And then how much the opponent believes that they're real determines the efficacy of the power that you use. So this essentially gives you an additional 20% chance to cause enemies to believe that these powers are actually real and to take damage from them, or to actually believe in the creatures that you conjure. So if you're using those spells a lot, then this is absolutely worth it. Nanio gets the full suite of them. I never use them because I prefer to use the crowd control spells that Nanio gets access to, and double specialize her in evocation. So if I want her to damage, then I just have her use an evocation spell. I'm, for the most part, not using the shadow spells, but if you like them, this is definitely worth taking. Ranging shots. Every time you miss an enemy with a ranged weapon attack, your aim improves, giving you a stacking +1 bonus on attacks against the same enemy up to the maximum of your mythic rank. Every successful hit lessens this bonus by 1. I personally don't take this. It's definitely useful if you're playing on harder difficulties where it's much harder to hit enemies. I would definitely recommend you pick this up in that situation. But on normal, if usually I'm playing with someone who has access to a hex, and if my archer shoots and misses, then ASAP, I'm putting one of those evil eye hexes on the particular individual, lowering their AC, and more often than not, that allows everybody to hit the next turn and that person is dead. So it's not worth taking something like this. But in a situation where even the hexes might not be enough to lower an enemy's defenses enough, having this extra boost to help your archers be able to hit their targets, it's good stuff. Rupture Restraints. You could create a surge of mythic powers that frees you from all magical restraints. Benefit. 3 times per day, you automatically dispel any effects that make you frightened, dazed, sickened, shaken, staggered, nauseated, stunned, paralyzed, or confused when you affected by any of those effects. I wouldn't take this. There are ways that you should have on your team to deal with all of those statuses. First of all, your save should be high enough where you're not being affected by those statuses very often. But if you are affected by them, you should absolutely have the means to deal with them. Taking a mythic ability, which, come on now, you don't get many of these. You only get 5. Out of this whole list that's available, you get 5 of them. So it's not like you can have the world. This is not something that I would take. The bigger they are. The bigger they are, the easier they are to hit for your ranged weapon attacks. You gain a bonus on your attack rolls with ranged weapons, equal to the penalty to AC the target receives from their size, if any. You face a lot of extremely large enemies. I haven't bothered to put the inspection on them to see how many of these extra large enemies are actually experiencing a penalty to AC for their size, but the fact that this is here, to me, I would assume that many of them are experiencing a penalty, and therefore this is worth taking, especially if you feel like you're having problems hitting enemies. Windwalk is fantastic. I always have a whole suite of buffs on her, so for the most part, I don't have problems hitting enemies. But, you know, depending on how your team is constructed and how things are going, this is worth it. Thundering Blows. The sound of your blows is powerful enough to damage even without piercing through enemy defenses. Benefit. Once per round, when your melee attack misses the target, you deal 2d6 plus 1d6 per 2 mythic rank sonic damage to all enemies in a 10-foot radius. I would say this is worth it, to be honest with you. Probably not, again, for your first mythic ability, but you miss with melee attacks, even if you have a 20 on strength, a bunch of different buffs, a bunch of great stuff on you, sometimes you just miss. It just is what it is. And it happens consistently, but hopefully when you do those full attacks, you're doing enough attacks where even missing once isn't necessarily a death knell for you. So this is worth it, but again, I would say the other melee mythic abilities are more important, like Ever Ready and Leading Strike. Unrelenting Assault. As long as you keep fighting, the power of your melee attacks keeps growing. Benefit. Every turn, as long as you make at least one melee attack, you gain a stacking +2 bonus to damage rolls with melee weapons up to a maximum of +10 that lasts until the end of combat. This looks great to me. If you're a melee character, then you're going to keep meleeing for the duration of the fight. So why not go ahead and take that damage bonus? Of course, you want to focus first on things that are actually going to increase your attack. So I still say every ready comes first. But if you want a nice damage boost, you couldn't go wrong with this. Unstoppable. Your inner fortitude is so strong that it lets you overcome most debilitating conditions. Benefit. At any time you would become paralyzed, you become staggered instead. If you would become nauseated, you become sickened, and you become shaken instead of frightened. Again, for the most part, these are things you should not experience, especially frightened. You should have enough saves and enough protection against fear that at the most you become shaken. But your people should not be running around all over the place. Now, I say that, but there have definitely been some times that out of nowhere, someone was able to paralyze me and there was just nothing I could do. And paralyzed is an extremely annoying status to get rid of. So, your mileage may vary. I've never taken this. I've played the beta a bunch of times, never taken it, never regretted not taking it, to be honest with you. All right, now we're getting into the list of mythic abilities that require you to either have already taken something here or require you to have a certain build or a certain feat selected in order for you to get it. So we'll go through this. So in order to get this, you have to have an arcane pool, abundant arcane pool. You've learned a way to increase your arcane pool. Benefit. Your arcane pool increases by a number of points equal to your mythic rank. Abundant Bane, which requires you to either have Bane weapon or greater Bane. You've learned a way to increase the number of rounds per day you can use your Bane ability. Benefit. The number of rounds per day you can use your Bane ability increases by a number of rounds equal to your mythic rank. Keep in mind these rounds will apply to the Bane weapon that you get from Aeon, and that what you get from Aeon also stacks with what you get from Inquisitor. So with all those three together, you have the chance to have a significant amount of rounds where you can use Bane weapon, if that's your thing. Abundant Key, which requires you to have a key pool. You've learned a way to increase your key pool. Benefit. Your key pool increases by a number of points equal to your mythic rank. By the way, key pools, I believe, come from monks, if I remember correctly. And then arcane pools come from maguses, if I remember correctly. Abundant Smite requires you to have Smite Evil. You've learned a way to increase the number of uses of Smite Evil ability. Benefit. You can use Smite Evil a number of additional times per day equal to half your mythic rank. Keep in mind, Smite Evil and Smite Chaotic are not the same thing. So I think Regal has Smite Chaotic. He does not get any way to increase that amount, whereas Sela has Smite Evil, so she could take this. Any means necessary, which requires you to be a Hell Knight level 7. A Hell Knight's attacks are treated as good aligned for the purpose of overcoming damage reduction. Garbage. There are other ways to make your weapons good aligned. There's no reason to waste a mythic ability on that. Beneficial Curse, which requires you to have an Oracle's Curse. You have found out that curses can be a blessing, and now you know how to use them. Benefit. You gain an additional Oracle Curse, but it gives you no penalties. This can be very nice depending upon what kind of Oracle build that you have and what you're trying to do. There are a bunch of different possibilities in it, so it just all depends. It's not consistent at all. Bloodline Ascendance, which requires you to have a bloodline. You are a paragon of your sorcerer's bloodline. You immediately gain an ability from the 20th level of your bloodline. A lot of those bloodlines are really, really nice, and they have some great abilities at level 20. So this could potentially be worth taking. Defensive Study, which requires you to have studied target. That should be you. You have found a way to use your perception and knowledge to better defend yourself. Benefit. Your study target ability gives you a bonus to AC against the target of your study target ability. Greybore has the ability to use this, and it might actually be worth picking up because he only gets access to medium armor and he doesn't come with any spells or self buffs. So this is a way to ensure that if he uses this ability on some really, really tough targets, it's going to give him some extra protection, but your mileage might vary. Everlasting Judgment, which requires you to have judgment. You use your mythic powers to power your judgments. You can now use judgments any number of times per day. So this is obviously fantastic if you're the type of build that is using judgments on a regular basis. Favorite meta magic. You can now use your mythic powers to fuel your meta magic abilities. Select one kind of meta magic. The spell level cost for its use decreases by 1 to a minimum of 0. So meta magic feats are like reach and quicken and empower, things of that nature. So especially for spellcasters who like to try to move spells to different spell levels and try to quicken some of those earlier spells, this is a great option to make it a little bit more cost effective for you to be able to do that. Full Reservoir, which requires you to have Arcane Reservoir. You learned a way to fill your Arcane Reservoir to the maximum. Benefit. You no longer gain only 3.5 Arcanist level Arcane points in the Arcane Reservoir after a rest. Instead, you gain 3+ Arcanist level points. And obviously you have to be an Arcanist in order to be able to use this. Oh, in order to be able to use this ability, you have to already have selected a meta magic feat that it would give you the option to lower. And then once you go into it, it will only allow you to select the mythic ability for the meta magic feat that you've already selected. So if while leveling up, you selected meta magic and power, then here it would have the ability for you to select meta magic and power to have a cost lowered by 1, but the other ones would still be grayed out. We already went over these two. Impossible Domain requires you to already have a domain or domain selection. You feel a closer connection to your deity. Benefit. You gain 1 more domain, ignoring all domain prerequisites. Monster ability if used properly. You could do things like give Sosale a pet if you wanted to, or you could be an evil character and then give yourself healing. Just a bunch of awesome possibilities and things that you can do. Great combinations, well worth taking in the right situation. We already went over this. Kinetic Overcharge, which requires you to have a kineticist level of 1 at least. You use your mythic powers to fuel kineticist abilities. Benefit. Gather Power ability now reduces the burn cost of the kineticist blast by 1 additional burn point. So kineticists take on burn and able to use some of their higher level powers. So this enables you to be able to manage that a little bit better. Definitely worth taking if you're a kineticist. Mythical Beast. This requires you to have an animal companion. Your animal companion is just as mythic as you. Benefit. Your animal companion gains a bonus to its strength, dexterity, and constitution equal to half your mythic rank plus 1. Its attacks now ignore damage reduction, except N-. This is a monster ability that you absolutely want to take if you have a pet. It's part of the reason Seela is such an amazing frontline fighter. She, of course, gets that saber-toothed tiger. You make that saber-toothed tiger mythic. It's going to get a massive boost to its stats. And that ignoring damage reduction, like I said, a ton of enemies have damage reduction. This is well worth taking. Over-Infused Blasts, which requires you to have kineticist level 1. You can use your mythic powers to change your kinetic blast ever further. Benefit. You can simultaneously apply 2 substance infusions to your kinetic blast. So basically you get infusions for your kinetic blast that add different properties to them. Like I did a build that was basically a kineticist blood mage, so they could make it where the blast would cause enemies to bleed as an infusion, that kind of stuff. Really nice. This is well worth taking. Second Bloodline, which requires you to have a bloodline while at the same time not having a second bloodline. You found a way to infuse your blood with even more power. Benefit. You select a second bloodline, getting all its benefits. Like I said, bloodlines are extremely powerful, so it can be well worth taking a second bloodline depending upon the type of build you run and the combo that you want. Second Blood Rager bloodline requires you to have a bloodline while at the same time not having a second Blood Rager bloodline. You found a way to infuse your blood with even more power. Benefit. You select a second bloodline, getting all its benefits. Again, same as before, bloodlines are awesome. Depending on your build, well worth it. Second mystery, which requires you to have a mystery and that you do not have a second mystery. You open your mind and soul to learn the secrets of a second mystery. Benefit, you gain a second oracle mystery. This is definitely very powerful along the same lines as getting another bloodline or getting an additional domain. It just opens up a whole level of spells and potential, what are they called? Mysteries are paired with, it's not discoveries, it's something else oracles get that basically adds some additional dimensions to their character. So for example, in the demon playthrough I'm doing right now, I have Darren, and I added a second mystery that gives him a line of necromancy spells and allows him to do some things specifically regarding bones and undead type of stuff, things he did not have access to at all before I selected this mystery for him. So well worth it, gives your character some more dimensions. Second mystery, Enlightened Philosopher, requires that you have a mystery and that you do not have a second mystery, Enlightened Philosopher. You open your mind and soul to learn the secrets of a second mystery. You gain a second oracle mystery. I do not know at all what is the difference between second mystery and second mystery Enlightened Philosopher, especially since they both have to do with oracle. Haven't dived into oracle yet, but I assume it's useful for you the same way bloodlines, domains, and a second mystery is useful for you as well. Second spirit, which requires you to have a spirit, while at the same time you do not have a second spirit. Your growing powers let you speak to one more spirit. Benefit, you gain one more shaman spirit. So, what's her name? Camellia is a spirit hunter. She gets spirits who allow her to have access to either different powers or abilities that she can get. So, for example, she could take on a battle spirit, which then at level 8 will allow her to specialize in a particular weapon. So you can choose the rapier that she's been using, stuff like that. Really, really cool. Well worth taking in the right situation. Thorough Elixir, which requires you to have an infusion. You have mastered the art of applying elixirs at a distance. Benefit, you can now apply your elixirs from a distance of 30 feet. So infusions is something you get from Alchemist. This basically gives you the ability to throw health potions and things of that nature, either at enemies or at your allies. Witch Wandering Hex, which requires you to have at least one level of Witch. You can make your patron give you additional powers. Benefit, this ability lets you select any witch hex and grants you the ability to use a selected hex. You lose the ability to use the hex after choosing another hex with this ability. So hexes are amazing, definitely very, very useful to tear down defenses of a particular enemy or to buff your party, among other things. So this could be worth it. I'll be honest, with both Ember and Camellia, I cannot remember a situation where I felt especially motivated to try to take this, where I felt like I don't have enough hexes available to me. Let me go ahead and grab this. But depending on your build and what you're trying to do, you might feel this way, in which case it's worth taking it. And that is the entire Mythic ability list. At some point, I'll also go through the Mythic feats, but looking forward to hearing your feedback. Let me know if you feel like I got anything wrong, if I undervalued some of these abilities, if maybe I overvalued some of them. Always welcome to hear the feedback. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.